All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Finance and Vibes. Shout out to you guys for all the response from the last week's episode. We had fun filming all that, and guys kind of gravitated to it. So we're pretty much we're happy about the response, and we try to push out more content. You feel me? What's up, guys? How's your week, man? What's happening?
Dogecoin was going crazy this week. But I would say we made the call. Those in the Patreon know we made the call at 6 cents, and I cashed out around 32 cents. I felt like it was a good time to lock in profits. Yeah. And so, this is all documented. We made the call. Those who jumped in made bread. Those who decided not to, you're lost. So we ain't good over here, man. We ain't good.
How's the market for you, man? Your friend's over here nodding his head.
I'm retired. I'm not investing anymore, man.
Yeah, I know this week was red for you.
I'm not doing that no more, man. It's been since February. It's just been stock market has been disappointing. But now I'm a crypto fanboy. Bitcoin, you know the vibes.
You know the vibes. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you're not gonna make it. NGMI, you're not gonna make it. You're not gonna make it. All right, what we talk about today, guys?
So today what we have planned is basically the question is how much do you need to retire? And I know that's a trending topic, and there's some called the FIRE community. I'm sure everybody knows what that is. We can talk about that template a little bit and poke holes in it, try to see where different things, other templates you could use, because the FIRE template is pretty much very aggressive. Other templates you could use. I think OC has some he posted on Twitter. We'll put that in the show notes so you guys can see it. So pretty much that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
OC, what you think? Yeah.
No, this is a good topic. And, just like you said, there's a thread on my Twitter page, Easy Finances for You. So letter E, letter Z, finances, the number 4, letter U. It's called planning for retirement, and it's a good thing to do because a lot of people are just focused on short term, and people don't really think, okay, from a compounding interest perspective and leveraging that, especially when you're young, how can you effectively plan for retirement? And I talk about this, and not to go too deep into it, but there are just 3 basic pillars you need to keep in mind. Always account for inflation. So, for example, if I'm a person who feels at this current stage, the cost of living in the USA right now, I'll be okay, you know what? If I can get $300,000 a year, or let's just say $200,000 a year, feel like I'll be in a good shape of retirement. Well, that's great. But, you're 25 and you plan on retiring when you're 65. Let's just go the traditional corporate America strategy, right? 65 is 40 years out. And so keeping in mind a 2 to 2.6 inflation a year, that $200,000 a year cost of living could easily translate to, if you do the math, so compounding 2.6 estimated yearly interest, 40 years, you're looking at around $560,000 in 40 years. So basically, you have to keep in mind that when you're planning for retirement, that $200,000 a year for standard of living will really be $560,000 a year in 40 years, right? So something to think about. The second pillar to really consider as well is to keep in mind that, okay, that $560,000 yearly, you need to budget for at least 20 years worth. So you're really going to be looking at 560 times 20 in terms of your retirement pool and how much you need. So that, let's just do the math real quick. That's about $11.2 million, right?
Yeah.
Which is so that's something. So that's another. So that's a very rudimentary, fundamental way to consider. And also, if you're leveraging things like traditional 401k that is tax deferred, you also have to keep in mind taxes, right? So you have to also keep in mind that obviously, while it's difficult to estimate what the tax rate will be in the future, one thing you can count on is it's probably going to be higher. Hence why people tend to go for investment vehicles like the Roth or things that are not tax deferred, because you can get the taxes now and then not worry about taxes later. So even though you have a traditional 401k or any tax deferred investment vehicle, keep in mind that taxes is something you also have to account for. So those are a lot of my main 3 pillars. More details in the thread, and we'll put in the link in the description. But I love this topic for sure. What you think, Fair?
Yeah, like I like that you mentioned Roth IRAs and all that because those are very essential. Like I did the calculation for my planning, but I didn't even plan for inflation. But assuming, well, we all know there's going to be inflation. Well, assuming you're 25 and you plan on retiring at 65, $400 a month for 40 years is about 200K at the end of the time frame. And if the stock market follows the 10% rule, well, it's not a rule; it's just a suggestion, I guess.
Yeah.
Sometimes stock go down. It'll be worth about $2.5 million. And like that's my ultimate backup plan. Like if everything else fails in life, I know that my retirement is going to be set, right?
Yeah.
But then
Remember inflation, though.
I think there's something that we're all forgetting that when you're retired, you can get sick. You have medical bills. You have this and that.
Facts.
So there are different things. Like for instance, I know we mentioned it in the last episode, but IULs. We have different life insurance vehicles that actually pay you money for like. So let's say you're putting in $400 a month to your Roth. You're putting in $400 a month to your IUL. Some IULs will pay you money if you were to ever be sick. Blah blah blah. So it's like
right.
In a certain way, I know there's things like 529 savings. I don't really know too much about that, but I know for a fact that the IUL can pay you like, medical bills, emergencies. So that's something to take into consideration that you're old, you can get sick, you can do all this. So you definitely need a plan for retirement. Other things in retirement, such as, things you don't want to happen, basically.
That's facts. Yeah. That's facts. All right. But anyways, no, that's a great topic. So, okay. So, we just got off a topic where we spoke about planning, what you're going to do when you just graduated. So, Joe, what do you think is for somebody who just graduated, we talked about things to do when you just graduated. What are some steps they can take to begin to effectively plan for retirement? Or should they even start, what do you think? Should they even start thinking about retirement now? Like, if you just graduated, I'm 22, 23, should we start now or should we worry about it maybe down the line? What are y'all thinking?
So for me, right, in relation to like the topic we talked about last week and what you said, we need to get like what's it called? Why is that skipping my mind right now? Your emergency fund. That's the first thing before you think about anything. But for me, like I always used to think, like when I came out of college, like the first thing, like what was in the mainstream, like I said, was FIRE, right? But I thought it was, now that I'm reading into it and seeing how it works, it's pretty much too aggressive for me. You're looking to retire at the age of 30, somewhere in your mid-30s, you get what I'm saying? And if you don't understand like what the FIRE method is like, there's something called the 4% rule and the FIRE like template. And it's basically, you have to, for every annual expense, for your annual expense in retirement, you should not exceed 4% of your portfolio. So say your family's so
for people who don't know, can you explain what FIRE method is?
All right, so that's what I'm trying to get into. So FIRE method means financial independence, retire early. So it's pretty much an aggressive method to like get to where you want to go and like retire. So the main question in this template is, how much asset do you need to accumulate to be able to like be comfortable and leave like fund your expenses? You get what I'm saying? So there's something called the 4% rule in the FIRE method, right? So what the 4% rule says is for you shouldn't exceed 4% of your portfolio for your annual expense. So let's say you have a family. So think about that. That's a pretty much aggressive strategy.
Yeah, that's very aggressive.
Yeah, if you're trying to get to that point before your 30s, right? So let's say you have a family. You have a family at 27, and you think your annual expenses is 40 grand a year. So that means you have to accumulate about $1 million worth of portfolio. So that's pretty much the premise of that method. But based off of what you talked about, I don't think you should. Personally, now I'm thinking, I don't think you should be that aggressive. So like you could implement parts of like the FIRE method with what OC talked about. And if you could read through like that, the thread of tweets OC put out. So somewhere between that, accounting for inflation, like just modify it to where you think is what is comfortable for you. Cause that retiring at 35, that's a stretch. I think is a stretch. But there are people that have done it. There are lots of articles online of people that have done it.
Yeah, like I actually want to like chime in on that retiring at 35 because I think like in our generation, people misread the word retirement.
Yeah.
Retirement, if you're a day trader, you're not retired. You are a day trader. That is your job.
Yeah.
If you're a swing trader, yes, you might not be trading as frequently as a day trader, but you're a swing trader. That is your profession.
Yeah.
If you are retired, you do not have to do anything to make money, basically. That's what I think retirement is. Obviously, like, things will be paying you like passive income, but I don't need to wake up today and say, oh, Apple's this thing, blah, blah, blah. Let me buy calls. I don't need to do that. I'm retired. So I think most people,
and even if I can add to that, I think also you could be retired and still working. So like my goal ultimately is to retire at 35, but also keep working if I choose to. In the sense that I like what you just said about like retirement is, so again, let's preface this by saying everyone's definition of retirement looks different. And so, but obviously there's a standard. But the whole idea of retirement is when you reach a point of financial freedom where you're making enough money passively, emphasis on passively. So it's coming to you passively to fund your lifestyle. And so for instance, if I have enough money from my investments, cash flow, real estate investments, whatever it is, passively to fund my lifestyle. And so I want to reach a point where if I choose to continue working, because I do enjoy growing my career and working on my career, it is strictly by choice and not by necessity. So if I say, okay, at 35, I'm a director, leading a portfolio or leading a business unit, and if I decide to keep doing that, it's by choice. And where if I have the opportunity to walk away at any time. So you can be retired, but you're still working. And I know it sounds conflicted, but it's the idea that like I'm not depending on my 9 to 5. It's not my main source of income. Rather, it's a source of income. And it might also be conflicting because people also cannot fathom the idea of being 9 to 5 and also an entrepreneur. And it's so crazy to me because I'm like, there's tons of examples of people who have a 9 to 5 and also an entrepreneur. Warren Buffett had a 9 to 5 leading Berkshire Hathaway, but he was a very successful investor and entrepreneur who had multiple real estate. And so like people have 9 to 5s and also entrepreneurs. I've forgotten his name. I think the CEO of Google, I think there was also a business he had started with some co-investors. I can't remember, but that's an example. He has a 9 to 5 as the CEO of Google. I forgot his name's skipping my head, the Indian gentleman. But he's also an entrepreneur. Yeah. So you know what I'm saying? So like, and because people assume 9 to 5 is I'm working that, not dogging on these professions because these are all honest living, but I'm working that FedEx delivery job, or I'm working that working in I don't know, like fast food or Amazon warehouse. No, you could have a very nice 9 to 5 and you also an entrepreneur. So anyways, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, basically, what I take from like retiring early is like we should think about it like buying back your time. You get what I'm saying? More of buying back your time where you don't have to, where you know like you'll be okay if you like, you could do whatever you want and you'll be okay. You get what I'm saying? Not like you retire and totally get out of the workforce and not so just like less stress. You don't have to worry about all these little things up and down. So that's why I think about retiring.
And if I could say something also, let's not, going back to the question I asked about like, should people start worrying about it now? I think, in my opinion, the earlier you plan, the better. So think about IULs. IULs are way more expensive to set up each year you get older. Yeah. Partly because obviously as you get older, it's riskier. You're closer to death. So obviously from a risk standpoint, a 40-year-old would be way riskier than a 20-year-old, right? But as well, compounding interest plays a huge role in that. I think the estimate is for every dollar you don't invest in your 20s, you have to invest 6 times much in your 40s to get the same amount. And so, it's just as a ballpark. It just says like so for instance, if it's 6 times as much in your 40s, 3 times as much in your 30s. So just keep in mind that like, okay, if you go by your entire 20s and do not invest, you have to start investing. So what you just mentioned about investing $400 a month, I can't remember what he said, and leveraging compounding for the next 40 years to hit a $2.5 million portfolio. If he decides to start that in his 30s, to hit that same amount, he probably needs to invest 2 times or 3 times as much to hit that same portfolio amount. So leveraging that compounding interest is that the earlier you start, the better. And there's just so many tools now at our disposal compared to like 40 years ago. at our parents' disposal, like Wealth Fronts, Acorn, some robo investment platforms that is like their goal is to make it easy and simplify it for you, even if you don't want to actively invest like the retail investors. So I think yes, definitely you should get on that. But also, don't put. I think people should also get away from the pressure. That's what I wanted to say. Pressure of like, oh, if I don't retire by my 35, I'm a failure. And it goes back to that whole social media entrepreneurship thing we talked about, where social media has created this bubble or hype to create this very unrealistic standards, where if you don't hit certain goals, you're a failure. Because Warren Buffett didn't become a billionaire. He didn't become a millionaire till he was in his 30s. And didn't become a billionaire till he was in his late 50s. I want people to keep that in mind. Warren Buffett, one of the world's richest men now, I think he's in his 80s or 90s. I don't know. But he did not become a millionaire till in his 30s and a billionaire till his late 50s. Right? Yeah. And in all metrics, one of the world's most successful investors and richest people in the world, that's a definition of someone who just was patiently investing and grinded it out. And like, I just want us to not fall into this trap of social media because people only show their wins. They don't show their struggles. And also, if people show their wins one year, you don't know that they lost 80% of it the next year.
Yeah.
On something. So you know what I mean? Like, go at your own pace, do your own thing. Don't get caught up in social media. Because, everybody rich on social media these days. 2 days ago, people were dogging on earning $100,000 salary as a single person in the U.S. I'm like, get the frick out of here. Like, bro.
On Twitter?
People, what do we call them again? LLC Twitter. Literally. And I'm just like, yo, we need to get a hold of this because it goes back to what I was saying. People create this, like, we don't want to have real conversations around finances and investing. We just want to have this like unrealistic standards and think it's cool. Like, if I come on Twitter and just say, if you earn $100,000, you ain't, I'm like, no, that's not realistic. Like, stats and reality says otherwise.
I like that you mentioned that because when we look at entrepreneurship, let's look at the average cutoff for entrepreneurship. Revenue does not equal profit.
I said that today. My
100K salary, even though I got to pay taxes, that is profit. You as an entrepreneur, you could be earning 60K revenue. What is your bottom line? You might be making 40K profit. You still got to pay tax on that. So you might be working more than me. And the thing is, maybe because we've talked about this before, right? But like, let's say you mentioned if I just graduated from college, right? If I just graduated from college, and let's say I didn't do nothing productive in college, maybe I did something that was completely irresponsible.
Yeah.
I think it's a better option for me to actually go, because let's not lie, just being an entrepreneur is not easy. Doing e-commerce is not easy. Trading stock is not easy. But what is easy is leveraging education to get a profession that will pay you more than the average person, and you can take that excess that you're making, invest it, and change your life in the future. I think they don't talk about that enough.
Right. So just transitioning here, let's do a quick plug-in, and then we're going to transition. So plugging in, of course, I always plug in. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Easy Finances for You. Easy, letter E, letter Z, Finances, number 4, letter U. On Twitter and IG, same handle. Follow my Patreon, is always plugged in the description. Y'all got something to plug in?
You guys follow me on social media, ActiveIfe, AKTIVEIFE. We also have some businesses we're working on, Melody Wines. That's coming out soon. I'll put the information in the show links.
Yes, sir.
So what do you got to plug?
Pretty much just Instagram, Twitter. Joe_D_Don on both Instagram and Twitter. Yeah, follow me. Send me DMs. Let's talk. You feel me? Yeah.
So transitioning, let's talk about a subtopic within that topic. So I think all right, Uzazi, what you thinking? What topic you thinking?
So I was thinking, since we're talking about social media, how would you say planning for retirement works when you're social media influencer?
Can I go ahead?
That's a tough question.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
I was thinking about that earlier, right? I have a question within that, so we could like try to like open it up from there. So if you're like you're a creative, right? You're a social media influencer, you're an architect, you're a doctor. Everybody's not into finances like we are. What do you think about hiring a fund manager?
Okay. Can I talk about this, because this is a very passionate topic for me in terms of, because I started consulting a lot with people who do freelance. If you're a social media creator, and if you have OnlyFans, because OnlyFans is something that's big now. So if you're a sex content creator, social media creator, the first thing I'll always tell people in that space, the first thing you need to do, practically speaking, whether it's an IG influencer or YouTube, be realistic in terms of what is the span that you have in this industry. What is the time span on average? And always shoot for the lower end. So for instance, let's look at OnlyFans, the sex industry. If you say the average porn star is it stays in the industry for 6 years, I will tell you that is the span, 6 to 10 years, for instance. I will tell you, you need to target a lower end. 6 years is what you need to plan for. And so with that 6 years, I will spread that 6 years over 30 years, meaning that if you do 6 times 30, you realistically, whatever your income is yearly, you need to work with a fifth of that. Do y'all see the math? Spreading a six year span within an industry to 30 years, which is a good amount. Whatever your income is, your lifestyle needs to be surrounded around a fifth of that. If you're making good money. Now, granted, if you're not making good money, if you're struggling, then obviously maybe you need to find another career, right? But if you're a social media influencer and you're making $500,000, $1 million, and your income is projected to grow each year, I'll say work with a fifth of that. And to Joe's point, absolutely. If you're not good at finances and you can afford to hire a financial advisor, you absolutely should, but make sure it's one that has a good track record of working with other people in your industry. That's the thing. You cannot hire a financial advisor that is used to typically working with people in a 9-to-5 to work with you as a social media influencer, because the industry is just not the same. You want to find people who have worked with similar people in your industry or a like industry, if it's not someone that's been in your specific industry and it has a good track record, a recommendation from all those people to do so. Because the fact of the matter is, I'll say if I'm an athlete, I don't want to work with a financial advisor that strictly works with engineers or 9-to-5s. I want to work with a financial advisor that works with other athletes and has a good track record of doing so. He knows the ropes, exactly. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
I want to chime in on that because Shaquille O'Neal, he just had a story about this when he met his own fund manager. So Shaquille O'Neal entered the NBA, I think 18, back in the days. He said his first paycheck was $1 million. He spent it in one day.
Yep.
He bought a car for himself, a car for his dad, a car for his mom, a car for his uncle. The bank called him that, bro, your account is in the red, bro. Like, what's going on? He said the next week he found a financial manager, right? A whole bunch of people came to him that, I'll triple your money, quadruple your money, 10 times your money. And he found one dude, I don't know what his name was. He said, we'll worry about buying bonds, buying, low growth stock, blah, 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 investing in some assets and companies. And he worked with that dude, and that dude changed his life. My point here is Shaquille O'Neal is a multi-millionaire, maybe almost a billionaire. And he had to make those decisions early on. And he's an athlete. He knows his paycheck is coming year by year. So as a social media influencer, you know that athletes have a span of 15 to 20 years. As a social media influencer, you might fall out of vogue tomorrow. So you got to be aggressive with your savings and investments. It's very important.
Right. And vibe, let's switch to, we can do a vibe check. We're going to do a vibe check in a little bit, but something that to keep in mind as a good example of an athlete that is following this principle, Rob Gronkowski, I'm probably butchered his name. He plays for, he plays with what's that OG's name?
Tampa Bay, Tom Brady.
Tom Brady, yeah. He has said since he started in the NFL, he has not spent a single paycheck of his salary. He lives off endorsements. And that is a brilliant dude because he knows the average NFL player's lifespan in the league is 8 years.
Facts.
7 to 8 years. So he's literally said, and he confirmed it again this year because somebody asked him. So we've heard you said you've never spent. He said, yeah, I have all my money, all my paycheck is in the fund that he's growing. And he said he obviously has vices, like he loves private jets and everything, but he said like, yeah, he strictly lives off endorsements. And that's a dude that when he decides to retire, whenever that time comes, this man's gonna be sitting on a pile of cash. He's not going broke. He's not going broke. That's a man that is not going broke, man. And that is how you should do it. And I don't know who gave him that idea. I don't know if it's just by virtue of he has a solid team. Unfortunately, a lot of these people, whether it's OnlyFans, whether it's athletes, these are people who are not necessarily coming from fairly privileged families like a lot of us, where we have a lot of good people in our corner advising us on, like, even if it's not our parents directly, just by virtue of our network. There's a lot of my friends who will reach out to me and be like, bro, I see you're into investing. And by virtue of having access to me, I'm more than happy to help them like plan for finances and investing and so on and so forth. But a lot of people who grew up in the hood, don't have that. A lot of people who grew up like in poverty don't have that. So like sometimes it's just really unfortunate, but at the same time, which is information now is so accessible, you just have to be like way aggressive if you know you find yourself in that shoes to make sure you're effectively planning.
So David, while it's true that you're a product of your environment, so what would you recommend people who don't know any better? What would you recommend for them to, I guess, do themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Can I?
We don't want to sound condescending here because it's not their fault that they don't know it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, before I jump in, yo, Joe, what you trying to say?
That's a tough one, but like
it be like that sometimes, man.
Yeah, that's my philosophy in life is after a certain, the kid needs to put his hand in the fire, and you get what I'm saying. Some people need to put their hand in the fire, and if he burns you, you figure it out. Because Allen Iverson, right? That's one of those athletes that didn't have a financial advisor. His whole thing got bust up. Allen Iverson had a great career, but the way he's living is not up to what he could be living as. Also, like, smart people say you learn from other people's lessons. You get what I'm saying? You try to like look around, see good examples, but that's a tough one. Like, the environment is really tough. That's something you can't control. And like we said,
the fact is, you still gotta just branch out. Like, look at KD, look at LeBron. Before they were in the league, living in poverty,
they had good
man.
circles, though. They had good.
They found good circles. You gotta find a good circle.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Here's my advice to people who are just getting off. My advice to you is, it's gonna take the biggest thing is you need to aggressively find people who are where you want to be, because I understand absolutely it's not your fault, but at the end of the day, you have to want better for yourself, and need to aggressively find people who are where you want to be. And the second thing too is to leverage platforms like YouTube. I cannot emphasize, I went to school for engineering. I knew nothing about finances in 2016. How did I learn so much? YouTube, investing, just being aggressive with it, right? And so, I'll just say, I mean, you gotta just know what you want, go out there, find people who are doing or being exactly where you want to be, and just be aggressive. Find a mentor too. Find a mentor. Be relentless. I always say this.
We'll talk about that in future episodes, mentors and stuff. Like, do you need one? How important is that?
Yeah, so let's talk about the vibe check. So the vibe check is 401k or IRA. I think this is an easy one, but let's just see what y'all think.
I'm doing IRA, man.
Yeah, I'm with fair.
Especially if you're a trader, man. If you, I gotta plug this guy because this guy is the king of IRAs right now. He's with Atlas Trading. His name is Hugh Heen. He plugs IRAs every single day on Twitter.
But
yeah, of course you're not gonna be able to cash out your money now. But I mean, you could borrow your money for 60 days.
IRAs though, can I say this? IRA has an income limit, so like.
True.
I'm gonna be casting myself when I say this, but I'm no longer eligible for IRA, so I'm finding maybe I need to also, I need help here. I find a very difficult time to like find a proper. Granted, I'm putting my money in different things, of course, and I'm also leveraging IULs, for instance. But I'm finding like a similar investment vehicle that I would like
Yeah,
for
you can
people
do the
who are
you can do the back door. Cause I know all these traders, they're using the back door to get to the IRA. So you put your money through I can't remember what exactly. I think there's two methods. You can either do like a self-directed IRA and then convert it to a Roth IRA, or you get a normal 401k. You contribute your money to a 401k, then roll it over to an IRA, and it works the same way. I think with 401k,
yeah. So in my old company, we had a Roth 401k, which is perfect, right? That's like perfect. Yeah. But my current company, we don't have the option of a Roth 401k. So obviously just contribute to get the match in the traditional 401k. But anyways, even before we even get into that, why IRA? Okay, so I talk about this on my Twitter too. But a simple reason is this. IRA, the difference in IRA and 401k. In a Roth IRA, for instance, you get taxed now. So I spoke about this earlier a little bit when I highlighted about planning for retirement and why you need to account for taxes if you have a traditional 401k. But with a Roth IRA, you don't need to do that. And the reason why is because you're taxed now. And so the gains you make on your Roth IRA will not be taxed in the future. But in a tax-deferred plan like a Roth 401, like a traditional 401k or any other tax-deferred investment vehicle, you get taxed in the future, right? And so if you're the kind of person who believes that tax rates will be higher in the future, you're better off with, obviously, an IRA where you're taxed now, and then the capital gains you make on your investment account will not get taxed in the future, versus the vice versa. Now, if you're one of the very few that somehow believes, despite inflation, despite the amount of money being pumped and printed, that somehow taxes will still drop in the future, then of course, by all means, if you believe tax rates will be lower in the future, then you're probably better off with a 401k than a traditional 401k than an IRA. But keep this in mind, though. Keep this in mind. I would say with 401k, there are now some brokerages. So make sure you ask. If you're working with a company, make sure you inquire. There are some now that are offering Roth 401ks, and I'll say those are major key. So if you're in a company where whatever brokerage your company is using is offering Roth 401ks.
Cowboy in Africa, brought to you by the makers of Sunshine Cookies and Crackers.
You're putting your money under your mattress or put it in your wall. If a fire catches you one day, you don't say I didn't warn you. Put your money in a Roth IRA or 401k. You've heard it now, because you've heard it now.
But lastly, real talk, right? We talked about cryptocurrency. And so this is why I like cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency is not all cryptocurrencies are equal.
He's about to go down the rabbit hole, guys.
No. We're wrapping up that one. But, we talked about cryptocurrency. Not all cryptocurrencies are equal. Look at the different value propositions of each. But something like Bitcoin, why is a perfect inflation hedge and a protection against inflation? Why might be a good store of value, especially as you're building for retirement. Part of the reasons why is this, because you can see now, you're trying to build a retirement in fiat currency, so regular US dollar, you're racing against inflation. And so racing against inflation means you have to have even way more of it in the future and aggressively invest even more and hope for better returns to match the same lifestyle that you're trying to achieve when you retire. So again, I'll end on that. My big tip, think about retirement early, start planning effectively for retirement, consider inflation while you plan for retirement, and Jayulo, live your best life. That's all I got.
All right, bet. One thing I took away from the day is pretty much the fund manager part. If you're not like whatever your profession is, if you're not like too into investing and finances, and you think about your future, get a fund manager. You get what I'm saying? And also what the vibe check was, we need to welcome a new member of our team, Zizi the Guru, you feel me?
Zizi?
Yeah, Zizi and we're a growing podcast, you feel me? So she introduced new sections, and what the vibe check is, we'll bring up two ideas and we'll put them up against each other and try to like see where we stand, you get what I'm saying? So we'd love if you guys could hit us up in the comments, hit us up on Twitter, give us ideas you want to pit against each other. hit ZZ up. She's acting shy right now, but next week, you feel me? She'll be.
Yeah, no, she's shy today. Next week she'll be,
Yeah, she's with us now. She's gang now.
She thinks her future husband is watching, and she's not. She didn't, like glam up, so she doesn't want to say much because future husband might be watching, so that's why.
All right, so if you got your tip of the day.
Oh yeah, enjoy your life. That's all I'm gonna say, man. Backup plan. That's all I'm gonna say. Your backup plan. If you do anything you want to do in this life, just make sure your backup plan is solid. And my backup plan is my Roth IRA, so make sure it's solid.
All right. Zizi, what you got for us? Take of the day.
I would say when Ife said that profits or revenue does not equal profits, that's a really big one that everyone seems to forget. Just because you're making revenue, well, okay, how much of that is profits? So that's.
We're wrapping up. We're wrapping up. But I literally tweeted about this today about $45,000 a month in sales does not equal $45,000 a month in net profit, because the average profit margin for a Shopify product, not a service are the ones that have high profit margins, but for products, the average profit margin is around 10 to 20%. So do the math. Anyways, with that, we're wrapping up. Thank you guys. Another episode of Finance and Vibes. Talk about planning for retirement. We talked about a lot, and just kick it with us, and more great content coming up. Shout out to Zazie, new member of the team.
Welcome to the team, Zazie.
Right.
Zazie, are you gonna plug your social media?
Yeah, plug your social media. Your husband might be watching. Plug it.
You don't want your husband to follow you.
She's being shy. Anyways, with that,
how will he shoot the shots?
Nah. Let her be. With that, we're signing out. Y'all take care. Easy. Peace.